Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Let's read and look at and talk about saving Melee Chase saving Sourdi. All right, that's what this video is going to be about. I'm hoping to spend half hour, not too long. All right, so let's get going. I would recommend, if you have a printer and you have ink and you can print it out, I'd recommend printing the story out. I like reading on the hard copy, but if you want to read on the screen, that's fine. Here's what I'll also recommend when reading these stories and these texts. Take notes, right? Like take notes on the story, take notes on the text. A lot of times what I do when I read, I have note cards and I'll write down the names of the characters, their ages, and who they are. So that helps you keep track of what's going on when you go back to construct your forms and write your papers. And what I also recommend doing before reading the story is look at the questions for the week that are posted on our online reading forums. Always have them posted ahead of time, and you can read the story with the questions in mind. And also, what I want you to do is, when I replied to a number of your emails, is to think about your ideas of work. Think about your ideas of the American dream and how they're portrayed in the stories. That's what the first paper I might have you do. Choose the idea of work, the American dream, some of these themes, and how they run through the text. All right, so let's jump into the story. Saving Sourdi. I love this story. This is one of my favorite stories. The beginning. Once, when my older sister Sourdi and I were working alone in our family's restaurant, just the two of us and the elderly cook, some men got drunk and I stabbed one of them. I was 11. I love that beginning. Nia's a badass, right? You don't mess with Nia. Already we get the idea of work just from those three lines. The first sentence of the story. How old is Nia? Nia's 11, and it's just Nia and Sourdi working in the restaurant. So you know they work, right? Think of this too as with work and class, the American dream, and the immigrant experience. Think of a lot of immigrants that come and open restaurants. They're working how long? All day and all night, every day. There's not a day off. And think of the kids who work in there. Nia's 11. What are most 11-year-olds doing? After school activities, sports, clubs, etc., etc. Nia's going to work every day in the restaurant, and so is Sourdi. And we know Sourdi is what, 5 years older? So once, when my older sister Sourdi and I were working alone in our family's restaurant, just the two of us and the elderly cook, some men got drunk and I stabbed one of them. I was 11. That's writing 101, how to begin a story as well. The story. I don't remember where Ma had gone that night, but I remember we were tired and it was late. We were one of the only restaurants that stayed open past 9 in those days. So it's past 9 in the restaurant. The men had been growing louder until they were our only customers. And finally, one of them staggered up and put his arm across Sourdi's shoulders. He called her his China doll, and his friends hooted at this. So we get this guy in South Dakota, right? They're drinking, eating, and it's just Sourdi and Nia in a restaurant. And he puts his arm around her and calls her like a racial name, right? Making her feel horrible. And Nia's not having any of it. Sourdi looked distressed and tried to remove his arm, but he held her tighter. She said please in her incense sweet voice, and he smiled and said, say it again nice and I just might have to give you a kiss. This next part is really important. Think about our themes. That summer we just moved to South Dakota. After all the crummy jobs Ma had to take in Texas, where we'd first come to the US, where our sponsors lived, we were so proud to be working in our own restaurant. When we moved to South Dakota, I thought we'd find the real America, the one where we were supposed to be, not the hot, sweaty America where we lived packed together in an apartment with bars on the window, on a street where angry boys in cars played loud music and shot guns at each other in the night. That summer we moved to join my uncle's family to run the Silver Palace. I was certain we would at last find the life we deserved. American dream, right? One of the things I asked you. What's your idea of the American dream? It's what I think of when I hear the American dream, the idea of the American dream. It's the idea that no matter who we are, that if we work hard enough, do things the right way, follow the laws, follow the rules, stay out of trouble, work hard, do things right, we should be able to get some type of lifestyle of happiness and carefree. Not that we're going to be millionaires, right? But just if we work hard enough, we'll be able to be free of a certain amount of worry. And this is one of the questions too in the forum. We don't know at the beginning, but we know Sourdi and Nia and Ma. They're from Cambodia. We'll know that at the bottom of this next page. But we know they're here. They're fleeing the Khmer Rouge massacre, the Cambodian killing fields. And it's like they have this idea of America. Not that things are going to be handed to them, not that it's going to be easy. They know they're going to have to work. But it's like, damn, we left the massacre to come to this place where people are shooting guns, we're getting racially harassed. Remember, too, America is supposed to be the melting pot. You know, give us you're tired, you're poor, we take everybody in. We know a lot of America can be hostile to difference and different people and immigrants and whatnot. So we get this paradox, this contradiction. America, land of the free, where everyone's welcome. You can do whatever you want. However, not everyone's treated that way. So we get a lot of that, and Nia's idea of the real America too. Think of what her idea of America is. Now I was panicked. I wanted Ma to be there. Ma would know what to do. She always did. I stood there chewing my nails, wishing I could make them go away. I ran into the kitchen. I had this idea to get the cook and the cleaver, but the first thing that caught my eye was a little paring knife. I love Nia. Get away from my sister, I shouted. Then the men were silent and they burst into laughter. I charged and stabbed the man in the sleeve. Here's another really important moment. In a movie or a television show, this scene always unfolds in slow motion and everything happens so fast. Think of this too. In a movie or a television show, or in a fairy tale, or in what we wish, the bad people are punished, the good people are rewarded. If you work hard, you get, we know in real life that doesn't work that way though, right? I thought Ma would take care of everything now. Here Ma pops in, and she acts completely different than what Nia thinks. And I was right, she did, but not the way I had imagined. She started apologizing to the man, and she helped him take off his jacket. She made Sourdi get the first aid kit from the bathroom. Quick, quick. Ma even tried to put some ointment on his cut, but he just shrugged her off. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to take the knife back and stab myself. That's how I felt when I heard her say, "No charge on the house." Ma grabbed me by the shoulders. "Say you're sorry. Say it." I didn't cry. I didn't start crying until after the men had left. "But Ma," I said, "he was hurting Sourdi." "Then why not Sourdi do something?" "You're not thinking. That's your problem. You're always not thinking." Afterwards, Sourdi said I was lucky. The knife had only grazed the man's skin. They could have sued us. They could have pressed charges. "I don't care," I hissed them. "I should have killed him. I should have killed that sucker." Sourdi's face changed. I never seen my sister look like that. Not ever, especially not at me. I was her favorite. But she looked at then the way I felt inside, like a big bomb was ticking behind her eyes. Here we notice, think about when you write your paper, if you write about saving Sourdi, here's the first instance of Nia noting a change in her and Sourdi's relationship. Think about this too. There's a lot going on here. Maybe even if you're like, I'm not an immigrant, and a lot of this stuff, fleeing the killing fields of Cambodia, I can't relate with. But think of the dynamics of family. Think of the relationship between Nia and Sourdi. Nia's 11 and Sourdi's what, 15, 16 at this moment. What happens? If any of you have older brothers, older sisters, younger brothers, younger sisters, if you have a little bit of an age gap, what happens when your sister or brother turns 14, 15, 16, 17, and you're still young? My sister is 9 years older than I am. So she was 16, I was 7, right? The time for playing, the 16-year-olds want to hang out with their friends. They want to hang out with boys or girls. They want to run around. So there's the natural pulling away. Also, a lot of people get pissed off at this moment because they want Ma, in a movie, and Ma would come to, they want Ma to come to the defense of Nia and Sourdi, and not these crackers from South Dakota who are calling Sourdi China doll and acting like assholes, right? But in real life, what would happen? If Ma caused a fuss. Remember, the Silver Palace is the only restaurant open past 9 in this town. Their livelihood depends on this. They're not making a ton of money. They're probably making money just to get by, right? So their business depends on this. Their livelihood depends on this. If they raised hell, the men could probably say not come back, could tell their friends not to come back. That's initially what you think, but we get why on the next page. Well, we'll get to that in a second, but we get the bottom of the previous page, page 117, the first instance where Nia and Sourdi are kind of drifting apart. We, on page 118, this shows how close they are together. And there's a really important part later in the text that also shows how close they are together and illustrates why Nia wants to save Sourdi. Top of 118. We were sitting together in the bathroom. It was late at night and everyone else was asleep. Sometimes we locked ourselves in the bathroom then, just the two of us, so we could talk about things like boys at school, or who was the cutest actor on television shows we liked, or how we felt when our family fought, when uncle and auntie yelled at each other, or when Ma grew depressed and smoked too much, and looked at us as though she wished we'd never been born. This night, however, Sourdi looked at me grimly. Oh no, Nia, don't ever say that. Don't talk like that. I was going to smile and shrug and say something like I was just kidding, but something inside me couldn't lie tonight. Anyone mess like that with me, I'm going to kill him. Sourdi took me by the shoulders and then shook me so hard I thought she was going to shake my head right off. She wouldn't stop even after I started to cry. Stop, stop, I'll be good, I promise. I was trying to protect you, I said through my tears. I was trying to save you. Think of this, save her. Think of the moments in the text where Nia wants to save Sourdi. This moment, Duke, Mr. Che. What does Nia want to save Sourdi from, too? Sourdi's head shot up and could see that she had no patience left. Her eyes were red and her nostrils flared. She stood up and I took a step back quickly. I thought she was going to grab me and shake me again. But this time she just put her hand on my arm. They could take you away. This is what Sourdi is thinking too, and what Ma is thinking. Nia reacted in the moment, right? And a lot of people, when they read this story, they say, and I love Nia. Nia's a badass. They say, oh, Nia, she's immature. She's impulsive. She doesn't know. She's 11, right? But also, Nia is stubborn, and I love that about her. Think of the things, if any of you are stubborn, think of some of our characteristics that could be both positive and negative. Stubbornness can be a negative characteristic if you're not going to change, if you're stuck one way. But it can also be positive if you're like, damn it, I'm going to get my work done. I'm going to do what I set my mind to. Think of some of the characteristics that can be both positive and negative, right? And also, Nia's a little different than Sourdi and Ma, and we'll find out why. Nia realizes what Sourdi is saying about being scared. And here's why Ma and Sourdi acted how they did. A chill ran through my whole body like a live current. We all knew about foster homes. Rudy Gutierrez in third grade was taken away from his parents after the teacher noticed some bruises on his back. He tried to shoplift some paydays from the 7-Eleven and got caught. When his dad got home that weekend, he let him have it, But after the school nurse took a look at him, Rudy was taken away from his parents and sent to live in a foster home. His parents couldn't speak English so good and didn't know what was happening until too late. Anyway, what kind of lawyer could they afford? We heard later from his cousin in Mrs. Chang's homeroom that Rudy's foster dad had molested him. The cousin said Rudy ran away from that home, but he got caught. At any rate, none of us ever saw him again. So much is going on in that paragraph, right? Rudy Gutierrez, he stole, and his dad smacked him around a little bit, which I'm not condoning. Don't hit your kids, right? I'm not condoning hit your kids, but I mean, if some people, this is a custom, right? This is some people do this. I don't think Mr. Gutierrez beat Rudy horribly, and I'm not condoning it one way or the other, but I mean, this is how they dealt with it. But what Rudy's school nurse saw the bruise, and he was taken away, and his fate was much worse, right? He was molested in the home by the foster father or whatever. And if something happened, and they're foreigners or immigrants, you can kind of see how the foreigners and immigrants stick together. They're in South Dakota, right? So there's this warning that if you mess up, what could happen? What happened to Rudy Gutierrez could happen to you. You want to go to a foster home? Sorty asked me. No, I whispered. Then don't be so stupid. I started crying again. And this is Nia is really brilliant. She's really smart. She's not dull. She's not slow. She's really smart. I mean, she's narrating the story. She has all these differing thoughts. Nia knows that Sordy's right because I realized Sordy was right. She kissed me on top of the head and hugged me to her. What I didn't tell Sordy was that I was still a wicked girl. I was glad I stabbed that man. I was crying only because life was so unfair. Think of that moment. I was crying only because life was so unfair. That's a current that runs through the story, too. Nia at 11. It starts off with Nia at 11, Sordy's 16. We end, Sordy is 20, Nia's 16. So there's a 5-year gap. But there's this moment about life being unfair. When do we learn that life's unfair? It's something we always know, right? You ever have your parents tell you when you want something and you're little, life's not fair, life's not fair, but we still get pissed off when things don't work out how we want them to work out. I don't know when we ever learn that, right? Think of the American dream. It's supposed to be fair, damn it. Everyone's supposed to have an equal opportunity. It doesn't work that way, right? I'm sure all of you have known. Do you know anyone who got a sweet job just because they knew somebody, not necessarily through hard work? They, right place at the right time. And this is Nia. I was crying only because life was so unfair. The bottom here, we get a turn, and I love this moment. We used to say we'd run away together, Sordy and me, when we were older. After she graduated, she'd be my legal guardian. We'd go to California to see the stars, Paris, London. Think of it, right? When we're little, our dream, and I have nothing bad to say against these places, but I'm going to run away to South Dakota. I'm going to run away to Des Moines, Iowa. I'm going to run away to some small town in the middle of Texas. Nowhere. It's always California. It's always Paris. It's always London. And here we get a moment. Cambodia even, to light incense for the bones of our father. We know the father died in the massacre. Think of all the people, think of who died in the massacre. Probably a lot of their family, a lot of their friends, a lot of people they knew. We'd earned enough money working in Chinese restaurants in every country. We had enough experience that it'd be worth something. This illustrates too how close Sordy and Nia are, and they drift apart. We lie awake all night whispering back and forth. I'd climb into Sordy's bed, claiming that I couldn't sleep, curling into a ball beside my older sister. The smell of her like salt and garlic and a sweet scent that emanated directly from her skin. Sometimes I'd stroke Sordy's slick hair, which she plaited into a thick wet braid so that it would be wavy in the morning. I would stay awake all night pinching the inside of Sordy's arm. think of this too, like, if you have an older sibling, or if you're the older sibling, a lot of times the younger sibling, they worship the older brother or sister, right? The older brother is the coolest, the best. That's like the hero. Because sometimes it's like the two of you versus the parents, You're so Nia worships Sourdi. Nia loves Sourdi. We get Duke here. When she first started saying Duke, I used to think of him as something like a bookmark, just holding a certain space in her life until it was time for her to move on. I never thought of him as a fork in the road, dividing my life with Sourdi from Sourdi's life with men. In those days, I didn't understand anything. So we get Duke here. Who's Duke? I like Duke. Duke's an alright guy. He's probably one of those. I mean, I don't know. Let's look. We'll see who Duke is. Maud hired Duke to wash dishes at the palace. At first, we paid him no mind. He was just funny-looking white kid, hair that stuck up straight from his head when he wasn't wearing a silly baseball cap backwards, skinny as a stalk of bamboo, long legs and long arms that seemed to move in opposition to each other. Chopstick boy, I called him, just to be mean. He took it as a compliment. So Duke's just one of those guys in school, right? He's not like a popular guy. He's just a guy. Nia is upset that Sordy and Duke get together, and this is why. I could see why he fell in love with Sordy. My sister was beautiful, really beautiful. Not like the girls in magazines with their pale, pinched faces, pink and powdery, brittle girls. Sordy looked like a statue that had been rescued from the sea. She was smooth where I had angles and soft where I was bone. Sordy's face was round, her nose low and wide, her eyes crescent-shaped like the quarter moon. Her hair sleek as seaweed, her skin was a burnished cinnamon color. Looking at Sordy, I could pretend I was beautiful too. She had so much to spare. Sordy is a beauty. Sordy is gorgeous. Nia sees Sordy and she's like, Duke? And remember, this is told from Nia's point of view, right? Who should Sordy be dating? The best looking, the football star, the prom king, the kind of winner, the kind of guy, the hunk or whatever, right? And she gets Duke. And similarly, when Mr. Che comes in the picture, Nia's like, Che? Sordy is beautiful. She does, and this is what, think of what Nia wants to save Sordy from. Nia thinks Sordy deserves more. Not that, just more, because she's beautiful. She doesn't deserve Duke, and she doesn't deserve Mr. Che. She deserves something else, a different life. The first time they kissed, I was there too. Duke was giving a ride after school in a pickup. He had the music on loud. So this is where they go into the field. Bottom of 119. We followed him to a spot in the middle of the field. It's the center of the world, Duke said, and he pointed back to where we'd come from. Suddenly I realized the rest of the world had disappeared. 120. The ground had appeared level, but we must have walked into a tiny hollow in the plains, because from where we stood there was only sky and field for as far as our eyes could see. We could no longer see the road or Duke's pickup, our town, or even the green smudge of cottonwoods that grew along the Yangtzing River or the distant hills in Nebraska. All at once Sordy began to breathe funny. Her face grew pinched, and she wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. What's wrong? Duke asked stupidly. Then Sordy was running wildly. She took off like an animal startled by a gunshot. She was trying to head back to the road, but she tripped over the corn stalks and fell onto her knees. She started crying for real. I caught up to her first. I've always been a fast runner. As Duke approached, I put my arms around Sordy. I thought you'd like it, Duke said. We're city girls, I said. Why would we like hick stuff? I'm sorry, Sordy whispered. I'm so sorry. Why does Sordy freak out here? Why is Sordy so upset? She has a meltdown. We don't know why initially. Keep your finger on 120 and flip to page, let me get it here, 126. All right, keep it on 120. Remember, Duke takes Sordy to the field because it's a beautiful place. This is the most important part of the text, right? When you write your paper, make sure you look at this part. Right in the middle of the page, I have it noted. Once upon a time. Think of how the story begins to once. What begins with once upon a time? Fairy tales, right? Once upon a time. Think of all our fairy tales. How do fairy tales usually end? The princess, the princess gets the prince. Duke ain't no prince and Che ain't no prince, right? But let's look at this. Once upon a time, in another world, a place almost unimaginable to me sitting in the pickup with Madonna singing Lucky Star on the radio. Sourdi had walked across a minefield carrying me on her back. So this is back in Cambodia, the killing fields. She was 9 and I was 4, so we get their age differences there. Sourdi's 9 and she has Nia on her back. Because she told me I could see it all clearly, better than if I actually remembered. The startled faces of people who'd tripped a mine, their limbs in new arrangements, the bones peeking through the earth. Sourdi had said it was safest to step on the bodies. That way you knew a mine was no longer there. So we get a little why Ma is so beaten down and why Sourdi is traumatized. She is suffering probably from PTSD, I would assume. Sourdi walked across this minefield with Nia on her back. Sourdi saved Nia's life. She stepped on the bodies. Think of that. Walking across the field, stepping on the bodies so she wouldn't trip a mine and blow them both up. Nia doesn't remember this. The only memories she has are from stories Sourdi tells her. Remember, they're up at night talking and together, and Sourdi tells her all these stories. That's the only memories Nia has. Her past is only constructed through these memories. This was nothing I would ever tell Duke. It was our own personal story, just for Sourdi and me to share. Nobody's business but ours. I would walk on bones for my sister, I vowed. I would put my bare feet on rotting flesh. I would save Sourdi. Nia loved Sourdi. See, Nia's like, damn, Sourdi walked across this field. She saved my life. I'm going to do what I can to, Sourdi's life isn't in danger physically at the moment, but Nia feels Sourdi deserves more than what she's getting. And Nia's going to, damn it, she's not going to sit by and let this happen. We know at the end it doesn't matter, right? Part of me, when people read this story, they're like, Nia just needs to accept it. And part of me says, yeah, but part of me loves the fact that Nia's fighting to the end. You know damn well Nia's never gonna marry Mr. Che, right? We know Nia's gonna probably go off to college. Nia's going places, right? But we get that moment there. Flip back to 120. That's why Sourdi freaks out in the field there. She sees this field and she's reminded of the bodies and all this horrible stuff. And Nia doesn't even realize it there. And Duke has no idea. So, 120. I like this moment. Ma didn't seem to notice anything for a while, but then with Ma, it was always hard to know what she was thinking, what she knew and what she didn't. Ma's smart. Ma's tough. I love Ma. But think of this, right? And you can get kind of why Ma's worn out and defeated. Ma leaves the killing fields of Cambodia to come to America for a better life, right? It's everyone's dreams of a better life. Ma busts her ass. How many hours a day do you think Ma works? How many jobs do you think Ma works? 2 jobs. Probably 16, 17 hours a day. So, Sourdi's left raising Nia, doing all the caretaking. And Ma's like, damn, I came here for I'm not worried about being blown up or getting massacred, but damn, I came here to work 17 hours a day just to scrape by, just to get by, right? Uncle fired Duke a few weeks later. We see Duke and Sourdi getting a little closer, so they get rid of Duke. Sourdi didn't say anything she knew Ma knew, right? The thing is, Sourdi, Ma, and Nia, they're all smart. Here we have Mr. Che. Uncle first introduced his friend Mr. Che in the winter. I'd had a strange dream the night before. We don't. I love these moments of dreams in the text, but we're not going to look at those. We don't really have that time. Um, so Che, we get this. A lot of people want to say this is an arranged marriage. I don't think it's necessarily arranged in the traditional sense that Sourdi is Che's betrothed sent out, but I think Ma kind of sets this up in a sense that why? Answer this question. Well, what kind of life do you think Sourdi would have if she marries Duke? And I like Duke. I think Duke's a fun guy, but Ma doesn't want Sourdi to work like Ma works. Ma doesn't want Sourdi busting her ass for 17 hours a day in the restaurant. Ma wants Sourdi to have a better life. Ma thinks Che, though he's no dreamboat, right? He's not a great looking guy. Ma knows that Che's an alright guy and he can give Sourdi a better life. If Sourdi marries Duke, what's going to happen? Sourdi's going to be working, probably supporting Duke. I like Duke, but Duke reminds me of some of my friends, they're smoking weed and playing video games all day at 30, right? So we get Che here. We get the description of Che. Mr. Che wrote letters to Uncle, to Ma. He thanked them for their hospitality and enclosed pictures of his business and his house. He had a house and a business, plus a formal portrait of himself looking ridiculous in another suit, standing in front of some potted plants, his hair combed over the bald spot in his head. Oh, so we have Che here, right? But this old guy was persistent. He took us all out to eat at a steakhouse once. He said he wanted to pay Uncle back for some good deed he'd done a long time ago when they both came to America. So there we get Mr. Che. It was the beginning of the end. I should have fought harder. I should have stabbed this man too. I have a line drawn because when I first read the story, damn, there's a jump, right? I saw Duke at Sourdi's wedding. She invited him for the ceremony, the reception too, but he didn't show up until the end. And Duke's upset because Sourdi's the love of his life. Duke's probably never going to date anyone as good as Sourdi, right? Nia's upset, Duke's upset, and they're standing around drinking. 122, the top of it, 122. Then it really became too much to bear, and I had to escape the terrible heat, the flickering fluorescent lights. I slipped from the church into the ferocious March wind and gave it my best shot. I intended to make it off church property, run to the empty field that stretched low and dark all the way to the horizon, but I only made it to the end of the walk near the rectory before vomiting. Finally, I spat a few times to clear my mouth. I could take a sip from Duke's beer. We didn't talk. So Duke and Nia are sitting around like, damn, Sourdi married Che, right? And we get this here in the middle. Ma liked Sourdi's husband. He had a steady job, a house. She didn't mind he was sold, and Sourdi just 18. So Sourdi's 18 when they're married. Nia's what, 5 years younger, so 13? How old do you think Che is? 40? 18 was a good age to start a family. I was younger than Sourdi when I got married, Ma liked to say. When Sourdi sent pictures home for the holidays, Ma oohed and awed as though they were winning lottery tickets. My sister and her old husband in front of a listing Christmas tree, a pile of presents at their feet. Then the red-faced baby sprawled on a pink blanket on the living room carpet, drooling in its shiny chair, slumped in it snugly like a rock around Sourdi's neck. Nia is like, damn, Sourdi at 18's already got a kid, married. Nia's 13. So she's like, damn, Sourdi's life's over. That's not what Nia wants. And remember when Nia said Sourdi and I were going to run away to New York, to Paris, to London. Where does Sourdi and Che end up? Des Moines, Iowa. Who wants to run away and make their riches in Des Moines, Iowa? Look, Sony, Ma pointed at the big screen television in the background of the New Year's pictures. Sourdi say they got all new washer and dryer to Maytag. Think of this, right? And a lot of people look at Ma in a negative manner. And Ma is doing what she thinks best is for Sourdi. Think of this too, if your parents want a certain life for you, or if they want you to Major in something specific at college that's not what you want. How many times have your parents think they have your best interest in mind, but it's not what you want, right? When I looked at my sister's pictures, here's Nia, I could see that she looked tired, tired at 18. This isn't what life's supposed to be like at 18, according to Nia. This next moment I love. And this kind of shows Ma in a different light. And this shows how like Sourdi and Ma are like that. Sourdi always said that Ma used to be a very brave woman. Think of all the shits Ma's been through. Husband killed in Cambodia, family, friends massacred, hacked to bits. She also said that Ma used to be a beautiful woman who liked to have her hair fixed in salons. Do you think Ma spent a dime on herself in America? Do you think Ma spent any money at the hair salon, nail salon? Hell no. All that money went to bills. The how, the family, paying bills, trying to do things, right? Never, no money for herself. Who wore pretty dresses and knew how to dance in all the fashionable styles. Nia doesn't remember this Ma. She only remembers this Ma through Sourdi stories. I don't remember this mother. I remember the mother who worked 2 jobs for us. So, how's Ma showing her love here? Ma seems a little cold and distant, right? Withdrawn. But man, she's had a hard life. But she's working 2 jobs for Sourdi and Nia. So, and then we get the kind of end of the story here. We got a few more pages left to wrap up, but Nia thinks Sourdi's in this marriage and she thinks she wants to save her, right? She thinks Sourdi's miserable. So Sourdi calls crime. Then her voice steady with anger and just is Ma there? What's the matter? What happened? Just let me speak to Ma, okay? And Nia doesn't know what's going on here. But we know, well, if you're older, or if you're married, right? Sordi and Che are probably fussing and fighting. We know later what they're fighting about. Sordi tells Che that she wants to go to college. Che doesn't want her to, but remember at the end they have that compromise that Sordi tells Che, and she ends up telling Nia, "I'm going to go to college once the kids are in school." So don't think Sordi can't fight for herself either. Sordi's pretty tough, right? She married Che and had these kids and did this, but she's going to go to college when the kids are in school. Anyway, we have this moment here. Finally, Ma said in the tone normally reserved for refusing service to the unruly or arguing with the customer. It's always like this. Every marriage is hard. Sometimes there is nothing you can do. So Ma, I love this moment too with Ma because you get so much without Ma really saying anything. Ma busts her ass all day, works all day 2 jobs, and still when Sordi's upset, Ma listens to her on the phone, right? Then Ma stopped pacing just a minute, she said, and she took the phone with her into the bathroom, shutting the door phone room behind her so Nia can't listen. When she came out again 22 minutes later, she ignored me completely. 22 minutes she went. She went in the bathroom and listened to Sordi for 22 minutes, after the initial whatever she listened to. I'm tired. Just let me rest. You girls, it's always something. Don't let your old mother rest. No. And we get Nia. Nia thinks something's wrong here, right? All right. So next, and Nia's trying to call Sordi to kind of get what's going on. 124. We have a few pages left. We'll wrap this up. I asked Ma if I could have a smoke. I love this moment too. She didn't get angry. She smiled in her tired way, the edges of her mouth twitching upwards just a little, and said, "Smoking will kill you." And she handed me the pack. Maybe Sordi should come back home for a while. She's a married woman. She has her own family. Ma didn't say anything, just tilted her head back. What you think? You so smart. You're going to tell me what's what? Ma threw her cigarette onto asphalt. You're not like your sister. Your sister know how to bear things. Oh, we get this here. Still, Nia wants to call. What does Nia want to save Sordi from? Nia, think of this. It's more like an existential crisis. Nia's like, damn, this is Sourdi's life. My sister, my hero, who we said we would go to New York, London, Paris. This is how Sourdi, and I want to get her out of this life. She seems unhappy. So Nia calls Duke, and they're like, damn, we're gonna go 125. We're gonna go out to Iowa, right, Des Moines, Iowa, and we're gonna save Sourdi. We're gonna bring Sourdi back. 125. There was the roar of the souped-up engine, then the spray of gravel. Snoop Doggy Dogg growled over the wind. What year? Snoop Doggy Dogg Doggy Style. 93, 94. So we know the year of the story. Uh, 126. Do you think she'll be happy to see me? He said out of the blue. Sorty sent me a Christmas card with a picture of the baby. It looks just like, but I didn't write back or nothing. She probably thought I was angry. She mad at me, you think? She must be mad at her husband if she wants you to come get her. She doesn't know we're coming. What? I didn't have time to explain. You're not running away from home, are you? Yeah, I'm running to Des Moines. And then we have that moment that we read. We found the house in Des Moines. We get to the place. Nia and Duke are going back and forth, right? 127. Right in the middle there. Sorty emerged from the kitchen dressed in a bright pink sweatsuit emblazoned with the head of Minnie Mouse, pink slippers over her feet, the baby on her hip. She had a bruise across her cheekbone and the purple remains of a black eye. Sorty didn't say anything for a few seconds as she stared at me, blinking, her mouth falling open. Now, initially, remember, Nia and Duke think Che hit her, but that's not what happened. A box of diapers or something fell and hit Sorty in the face. What's Sorty think? This is a small moment that often gets overlooked too. Sorty, where's Ma? Home. Oh no, Sorty's face crumpled. What's Sorty think? Sorty thinks something happened to Ma. There's only one reason Nia would come here. Something's wrong, and it's not. So you know nothing's wrong with Sorty and Che other than the regular marital strife. I couldn't believe how dense my sister had become. We used to be able to communicate without words. Everything's fine at home, of course. Please, little sister, sit down. Let me make you some tea. Duke. What's going on, Duke? I said, what the hell's going on? There's Duke. He punched Che. He punches Che and the husband. Sorty screamed. Duke drew back his fist again. Like, what the hell's going on here? Right? Um, Sorty's husband stood up, blood gushed from his nose. 128. We're almost done here. Come on, Sorty, let's go. But it was pretty obvious she didn't want to leave. The baby began shrieking. I started crying too. After everyone had calmed down, Duke went to the street to the 7-Eleven to get a bag of ice from Mr. Che. He kept saying, I'm fine, don't worry, even though his nose had turned a deep scarlet and starting to swell. Nia, what's wrong with you? This is Sorry, right? What's wrong with me? Don't you get it? I was trying to help you. You were crying, I squinted at my sister. I heard you. I'm going to have another baby, you know. That's a big step. That's a big thing. She said this as though it explained everything. You sound like an old lady. You're only 20, for Christ's sake. So Nia's 15, right? Nia's 15, Sorty's 20. You don't have to live like this. Ma's wrong. So Sorty's 20, going to be 22 kids, married to Che. You can be anything, Sorty. I love that moment. Because a lot of people are like, Nia, you're young and immature. And I love Nia. It's like, damn it. You could be anything, Sorty. You don't have to live like this. Sorty pinched her nose between two fingers. And this is where Sorty shows how tough she is, too. Everything's going to be fine. We just had a little argument, but it's okay. We had a good talk. He understands now, right? Sorty, he understands now. I'm still going to go to school. I haven't changed my mind. After the baby gets a little bigger, I mean both babies, maybe when they start preschool. So think Che probably wanted Sorty to stay at home and be the housewife, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But Sorty wanted more. And they fought. And Sorty's like, damn it, once these kids are in school, I'm going to go to school, right? Just then her husband came back. Sorty looked at me then, so disappointed. I knew what she was thinking. She had grown up, and I had merely grown unworthy of her love. We know that's not true, though, right? We know Sorty still loves Nia. more than anything, probably. It's just their lives are different now. It's like when your older brother or sisters gets older and they move out. They love each other still, but it's just different now. Uh, I turned away. I watched Duke standing in the doorway holding the baby in his arms. He looked surprisingly young. Sourdi lent us some blankets. Don't tell Ma I was here, okay? We'll be home by afternoon. She doesn't have to know. Sourdi pressed her full lips together in a thin line and nodded in a way that seemed as though she were answering a different question. And I knew that I couldn't trust my sister to take my side anymore. As we pulled from Sourdi's house, the first icy snowflakes began to fall across the windshield. Sourdi stood in the driveway with the baby on her hip. She waved to us as the snow swirled around her like ashes. She had made her choice, and she hadn't chosen me. And I love this moment too, because Nia, I think the story is a masterpiece. I think it would be a horrible story if Nia was like, oh, I understand now. Nia, oh, this is just how this. Nia still is like, damn, why? That part being life's not fair. She still thinks it's these things. Sourdi told me a story once about a magic serpent, the Naga, with a mouth so large it could swallow people whole. Our ancestors carved Naga into the stones of Angkor Wat to scare away demons. Sourdi said people used to believe they could come alive in times of great evil and protect the temples. They could eat armies. I wished I was a Naga. I would have swallowed the whole world in one gulp. But I have no magic powers. None whatsoever. Damn. So what's Nia? You know, Nia seems to accept some things and not accept other things. Nia wanted to save Sourdi, but there's not. Nia's is stubborn and stuck, but I love Nia too, and her drive, what she wants. You know damn well Nia's not going to marry Mr. Che. You know damn well Nia's not going to settle for Duke. You know Nia's probably going to go to college, university, get the hell out of Dakota, Des Moines, or whatever. Go somewhere else. Nia's going to live a life. But you get this whole family dynamic here. And let's look at the questions. How is the actual America different from Nia's imagined America? The actual America they are is a silver palace in South Dakota where Ma's working 17 hours a day, where after school, Nia and Sourdi, instead of having fun, they got to go to work every day. That's not America. The idea of America, think of our shows we watch. What are you supposed to do in high school? Have fun, run around, not work every day, all day. You're not supposed to get some South Dakota hillbilly putting his arm around you calling China girl. It's not supposed to happen. Or if he does, there's supposed to be punishment. Sourdi, the most beautiful girl in school, shouldn't settle with Duke and Che. They should get the most handsome. They should go to college, meet somebody, live this life, travel, do fun things. Not settle down in Des Moines, Iowa with this. This is just Nia's idea. Nia's idea, right? The real America. That Ma works hard. Ma's probably worked harder than I could ever dream about working. That if you work hard, not that you're going to be a millionaire, but damn, at a certain point, things should get easier. Things would come that something's going to pay off. And Ma's busting her ass just to kind of get by. And question 4 at the end of Saving Sourdi. What is the effect of the story being told from Nia's perspective? How might the story be different if it told from the mother's point of view? Damn, we get a lot more horror. Damn, we would get Ma. Ma probably is up at night seeing her husband's body, seeing all the bodies of her family, friends massacred in Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge massacre, 1975 to 1979, purported 1,386,734 killed. Some people say as high as 8 million, or at one point, yeah, it's 8 million people. So, you could look up the history of that. I asked you to. How does this horrific event inform the story? It haunts Ma. We see Ma beaten down. We see even Sourdi beaten down a little bit, right? She doesn't have that zest, that stubbornness that Nia still has. So Nia was young enough to be able to escape that, but she's still haunted by it, by her family's involvement in it. And you can think of our class themes. How's work portrayed in Saving Sordy? Nia, Sordy, and Ma are busting their ass. They're working not to get ahead, just to get by. That's the physical labor, the work. Think of all the other work that's being done. The work of navigating the relationships, class too. What class? They're immigrants, right? They're in a class by themselves that's kind of separate in a way, and you can kind of see how they're looked down upon and taken advantage of. Rudy Gutierrez, think of those moments. But I mean, it's a different America for Nia, Sordi, and Ma. But I mean, if I were to bet money, I think Nia's stubborn enough, and Nia's a badass. She's one of my favorite characters. That she's gonna take a lot of lumps, right? Life's not things don't work out, but man, she's not gonna settle. So, and we know Sordy and Nia are close, as close can be. And that one moment I love about Ma, I remember the Ma who worked 2 jobs for us. So despite Ma being beaten down and distant, Ma worked 2 jobs for us. She worked all the time. So we get the kind of confluence of all these things in Saving Sorda, told through the point of view of Nia, who opens at 11 and ends at 15, and kind of how America, that snapshot of America in those 4 years, is portrayed.